I'll go back to that a little bit. Oh, my water's broke. Has it been off that long? God, right. My water's broke at 4ish in the morning, and Christina says he's gone back to in the bath. Um, yeah, my water's broke, and I thought, oh, John's gonna kill me because he was picking his car up. So I tapped him and told him, like, my waters have broken. I'm going for a bath. So I did. And then at 6ish, I was like, yeah, this is happening now. So I said to John, I think we're going to have to take my stuff and go to the hospital. Um, so he rung Mark, who was taking him to get his car, and said, I'm going to have to ring the garage and rearrange. We got to the hospital it was about 8 o'clock. Got all booked in and everything. And I was adamant to the midwife that I was giving birth standing up because somebody had recommended it. And she was like, no, no, you're better on the bed. And I was like, no, I want to give a birth standing up because Luke's labour was horrendous. Um, so I did that gravity prevails and it's quicker standing up. So, right, get me on that then. So in the end, she agreed, and they were great. I had to get on the bed to be examined in between. But Liv came at 9:49, um, so I wasn't in there very long before she arrived. And they were great. They put like a gym mat that you get at school on the floor, and then they stand behind you and catch the baby. So they did catch her. She was fine. John cut the cord and everything. She was an ounce heavier than Luke. So to say that she was nearly 2 weeks late, she was small because he was 3 weeks early and he was £6 4. So she was only little really, but she was fine. Um, and then obviously we let Pauline know, John's mum, and she brought Luke up. He didn't stay very long, just so that he was involved and could see her and stuff. Um, and then they moved me down to the ward. I think it was about 12 o'clock, and once I'd had a shower and everything. And when I got down there, I was like, I'm not staying, so I'll sit on the chair. I won't mess the bed up because you'll have to change the sheets. I'll sit on the chair. And they were like, no, no, you have a lie down. I was like, no, no, I'm not staying. I want to be seen straight away and I want to go. And they were like, oh. So who should be on but the nasty midwife that had told me I was constipated and I was pretty much making it up when I was poorly. She was the head midwife for the day, so she comes on over. She must have obviously didn't realise who I was from Adam. And she says, oh, your labour went swimmingly. You could have had a home birth. So looks at her like as if to say, are you fucking serious? And I didn't say anything. So I just said, well, if you could get someone to come and sign me out, and I'm ready to go. And she was like, well, we could do with you a little bit longer. And I said, oh no, my shopping's coming this afternoon. I need to be home. Um, so they eventually let me go at 2 o'clock. Um, Obviously, having checked that Liv was all right and everything before they let me go, and I was fine. Um, and John said, when we come out, you should have told her, you know, for all your negativity while I was in and nastiness. I've been diagnosed with cancer, and I was like, I just couldn't be bothered wasting my time on her. It just wasn't worth it. Um, so we got home. Only took 10 minutes to get home from the hospital. Shopping was coming between 3 and 4. John's mum brought Luke round. His sister came. Um, I think I asked Michelle to wait till the next day because the shopping was coming and we'd only just got home and everybody was there. I said, if you come the next day with the girls, and then just spend the day. And then, of course, we had to let Christie's know that I'd given birth. So I think we did that on the Monday. Um, and they just said that I would get a scan appointment and they would also do my bloods at that time because they do what they call your tumour markers. Um, and obviously a full blood count and everything and making sure that your other organs are functioning properly. They do all that while you're there. And then they said I'd get an appointment with Mr. Wilson to go through what the next steps were going to be. So that was fine. Of course, that winter that I had Olivia, the snow was ridiculous, and we lived on a main road at the time. And I think the snow was like this deep, even on the main road. But it was quite nice because we could get out and walk with the pram, and John's mum at the time only lived on the estate at the back of us, so we were really close and we could walk to and from, and the shops weren't far and stuff. So that winter we had a really good winter, to be fair. I mean, we obviously did talk about it over Christmas and stuff, but we gave Liv and Luke a good Christmas. Obviously, she didn't have a clue what was going on, but it was nice being all together as our new little family unit. And Luke had a great Christmas, and he loved being a big brother. Although he did get a bit of jealousy to say he was 11. I didn't think he would, but he did a bit. And then in the new year, I got my letter to say when my scan was going to be. And that was middle of was it the middle of January I went for that? Yeah, middle of January I went for that. And at the appointment, they give you this. I don't know if anybody's ever had a CT scan, but they give you this drink to drink. 900 ml of, if anybody likes Pernod, you're laughing, but it's absolutely minging. It's a drink I can't stand, Pernod, and that's what it tasted like. So they ask you when you're there if you want blackcurrant, orange, or lemon in it. So I've always gone for blackcurrant. And the reason you need to drink that is because when they do your scan, depending on what sort of scan you're having and what they're looking for, when they do mine, they have to put a cannula in. And then when I'm having my scan, they attach this tube of dye, and it releases into obviously your bloodstream, and then they can see things better when they're doing it. But the drink is minging, and you have to drink like a small cupful every 10 minutes for an hour. So normally I go off and do my bloods while I'm drinking the drink, and then just go back. But once you get back into like the waiting room where you've gone for your drink and stuff, I have to leave John at that point and go through to the next bit of the process. You have to go on your own. And when I first started going, they've changed it now. It used to be one big waiting room, and it was all male and female, and you just sat and chatted with whoever was there. And of course, everybody's asking what you've got, or why you're there, or so you meet some really nice people. But it's a bit daunting going in for the first time. Obviously, after that, it just becomes run of the mill, and you know what the process is. But the first time, it's a bit daunting going through and sitting and waiting, because it's just the unknown. And then they come out and get you. There's quite a few scan rooms in there. They come out and get you. You go get into your gown, and you get a bit wiser. So I wised up to the fact that you just needed clothes that didn't have any metal on. So you couldn't wear necklaces or anything like that. You had to take all your jewellery off. But if you could go in a dress that didn't have any metal in the buttons or anything like that, you didn't have to get changed into a gown. The first time I went, obviously I did. And then you pack your stuff into like a little shopping basket, and then you take it with you wherever you're going next. And that's when they put your cannula in. And for whatever reason, they always struggle with mine. And once she was like, if we don't get it in next time, we're not going to be able to do it. And I said, well, you better get it in then. I ain't come for the fun of it. But normally they're pretty good. And then you go and sit back in that waiting room until you're called for your scan. And then when they take you through, it's like a big polo, really, and with a bed running through the middle. And they talk you through what's going to happen. And I lay down on this bed, and she linked me up to this dye that they're going to put in. Excuse me. And she says to me, we'll do this, and you have to hold your breath, and the machine will tell you when to release it, and blah blah. Oh yeah, okay. And she says, and when we put the dye in, I will tell you. She said, it we do get told it gives you a funny sensation that you've weed yourself. I thought, really? Okay. So I said, right, okay. So she gets me all hooked up, and she goes into her bit because, of course, they have to shut the door and go into their own private bit. So she comes on, she says, we're going to start the process now. And I'm like, okay. And then it starts moving you backwards and forwards. And she says, and hold your breath. So you hold your breath and you're like, it feels like ages, but it's probably not. And then she says, and breathe. So then you can breathe. So then she tells you, the woman, we're going to release the dye now. Okay. So they release it and you feel okay. You don't really feel anything. And then all of a sudden, you get like this really, it's really weird, a really warm gush as if you've wet yourself. Very strange. So I'm like, I haven't wet myself. She warned me about that. But it's always like, have I or haven't I? So she comes in and I said to her, I can't believe it. She said, everybody, we warn everybody, she says, because they do think that they've wet themselves and they don't want to get off the bed. So that's a bit bizarre. But, they're always lovely. Um, and then once I've had my scan, and this won't be the same for other people, because I know that my friend who's got it now, her results are back within a couple of days. Um, they obviously send the results back to Mr. Wilson and his team, but it takes 3 weeks for that process for them to do it, refer it back, and then for them to meet and say what outcome they think it should be. So that's always a hard wait, really, because of course you don't know what, if anything, they've seen on that scan. Um, and then I got my appointment with Mr. Wilson. So Michelle came with Simon to Luke. Luke was all right because he was at school, but they came across, sorry, to look after Liv. And the appointment with Mr. Wilson was a bit of like, it was back to that Macmillan advert where when they're telling you stuff, you just don't really take everything in. But he said in that meeting that the scan had showed that it was more widespread than they thought. Um, and they'd met and discussed it, and they wanted to do the cytoreductive surgery, which essentially was a 12-hour surgery, um, where they take all the bits inside that you don't really need. So he named them all. There was things that I'd heard of, like your spleen and the lining of your abdomen and stuff, and they go back to the site where the tumor started and they take more of that away. But then he was going into like it was on my ovaries and my uterus, so they'd have to take them. Of course, I was only 34, and when we talked about having Liv, we'd always talked about having two close together so that they weren't like Luke and were on their own. Um, so that was hard to listen to, I guess. They, they wanted to take my spleen. Well, that of course then means that you're on medication for the rest of your life. So there was loads of different things about if they took this was what the implication was. And of course, you don't first visit. There's just no way that you can take all that in. The mortality rate with the operation was 10%. So that's quite high, really, given that I had this new baby. um, they put during the surgery, they, instead of doing chemotherapy where it goes through your blood, and then potentially you lose your hair and everything, they put 4 metal rods into your side and they put the chemotherapy in through those rods, and they're in for an hour and a half, and it's called a heated chemotherapy. So it's supposed to kill any of the mucus that they didn't get. So anything to do with the tumor, it should kill everything in that 90 minutes. So I've got like 4 scars down my side here. And then I've got obviously the surgery scar, which goes from right under my bust down to my pelvis. But the biggest thing, I guess, he said to me in that, or or what I took away from that. Obviously, it wasn't the biggest thing because the surgery was the biggest thing. But the thing I come out of that room with is he's going to take my belly button. And it sounds ridiculous. I know it sounds ridiculous. But at the time, I was like, what do you mean you're going to take my belly button? It's pierced. I've got a flat belly. I'm like, no, I've had it pierced for years. You can't do that. But they class it as scar tissue. So it's something that you don't need. Um, so I was like, right, okay. And he was like, right, so if I can just put it another way, if you don't have the surgery, you've got a 15% chance of survival because it'll just smother your organs and eventually, it'll just kill you. Um, or if you have the surgery, there's an 85% chance of survival, and that those figures at the time they'd only done 600 operations on this particular cancer, and so they didn't really have a lot of history. So they could only tell you that you had an 85% chance of potentially surviving 10 years. Obviously, I'm over 10 years now, so the obviously the more operations they're doing, the more data that they've got, and they can give it to people and share it with people. But he said he wanted to do it within the next few weeks, and I was like, just can we just hang on a minute? So I was like, well, that's a lot to take in, and I've got a new baby who we haven't had christened yet, and we haven't had a family holiday yet. um so I can't come in a few weeks, it's too soon. So I asked him if um they would let us do those things before my operation. And of course, he couldn't give me an answer there and then because he needed to go back to the team and ask the question. But he was great, Mr. Wilson. He said obviously he sympathised and he understood, and he would take it away. And if they could do that, then they would do that. So we left. We left probably still with a lot of unanswered questions, but because we hadn't asked the right questions, I guess, because it was such a shock of what he was telling us when we were there. It was just too much to take in all in one go. Um, and then when we left him with, can it not be a couple of weeks? Can it be, I don't know, can we get to the Easter holidays? I think is what we asked him for, so that we didn't have to take Luke out of school. And then I could come in then. So that's what he went away to find out. And we obviously got in the car, Michelle and Simon, I knew would be waiting anxiously at home. And I rung her to tell her what they'd said. And I knew that was going to be hard. And this probably goes back to Shauna's question. I knew she'd be devastated as soon as I said that I needed the surgery. And she did. She cried. And I just said to her, don't cry, because I don't want to cry. Because I didn't want, if I felt like if I fell apart then, it'd be harder to pull myself together. So we needed to get home and focus on the kids and deal with it as the hospital told us we needed to deal with it. So we did. We went home and we talked about it a little bit because Luke was at school. But then it was put to bed until the hospital came back to us on what we could do. And if this is going into the next chapter, so I'll stop. But they did let us defer the operation until the Easter holidays. So we did get away. But I'm going to stop because I just carry on and on and on waffling, and I'll save the other chapters till tomorrow. But thank you again for everybody that's joined. I'm sorry that we got disconnected. It could be my Wi-Fi. It just said video had stopped, so my apologies, and thank you for staying on. And if anybody's got any questions that they think of, either from what I've said the past 2 nights or anything from the book when you've read it, just message me the questions and I'll answer them on tomorrow's live. And I'll do the next 2 chapters tomorrow. So thanks, guys. Love you all. Bye.